There is only one planet we call home. As of now, we know only Earth as a place where there is life. But outside Earth, there is only one place where there has been continuous human presence for the last 25 years. So most millennials, we have had continuous human presence on the International Space Station. I have with me Dr. Sharmila Bhattacharya. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
She's a biologist by training, has flown many experiments to the International Space Station. The International Space Station is a football field sized laboratory orbiting the Earth at about 400 kilometers above the Earth. Dr. Sharmila, what is the kind of biology and science, especially biological science and human science, which has been done at the International Space Station? And you are a specialist, you have yourself done that.
Yes. Yes, so exactly like you said, since November of 2000, we have had almost continuous presence of humans, of crew, maintaining and managing the International Space Station. And a big part of their job was to do science. So the first several years, went into setting up the station and the laboratory that is there. And then for the last, close to 15 to 20 years, we have been doing very active science as an international community. And there's been all kinds, as you ask for biological sciences, there's been all kinds of experiments done by a variety of people looking into, for example, muscle loss, bone density loss, cardiovascular changes in the circulation, the circulatory system in the body, immune changes, kidney stone formation, a variety of things. So all of this together has really helped us build up that story, because remember, we as a human species, we are adventurous, we are explorers. So going to the International Space Station, being there for this period of time, and many of the astronauts have been there for several months to over a year, right?
One of them has been there for more than 2 years.
Exactly. And so what that is building up to, the more data you gather, the more ready you are for a longer stay on the moon and then on to Mars, right? We want to get to Mars. We've been to the moon before. We need to get back to test certain things. But then we want to go on to Mars, because that's a new destination. We think there's water, under the surface of Mars that we could utilize, right?
So is this biology experiments all in preparation for creating another human habitat outside Earth and beyond the International Space Station?
Yes, absolutely. The International Space Station has served as a valuable space laboratory that teaches us as to what to expect, right? So then the next step is indeed, so actually one of the other helpful things is when the International Space Station gets to its end of life, there'll be a commercial low Earth orbit destination, which will also be very helpful, because that will continue to do science. Because even though we've been doing science for the last 20 years, we still have more that we need to figure out. And so having the commercial low Earth orbit destination as the next will be very helpful. But then we want to then continue by going back to the moon and then on to Mars, because like you said, the habitats or the habitation or the experiments that we do on the surface of Mars will have to be much longer duration.
Sure, it takes 10 months to go to Mars.
Exactly.
One-way ticket.
6 to 9 months at a minimum, one way. And then you want to stay there for a few months and then 6 to 9 months to come back. So you really need to understand those 2-year, 1.5 to 2 year long durations at a minimum in this deep space environment with elevated radiation, with reduced gravity. Now, that's the thing is, even what we've learned on the International Space Station is in microgravity, right? So on the moon surface or on Mars surface, where the gravity is a little bit different, closer to 1/6 on the moon, closer to 1/3 on Mars, how is that going to affect biology? We need, again, to do those studies to understand that better.
So meaning you're one of those who thinks that we should be permanently inhabiting Mars.
Well, anything else, as a scientist, I think we are curious. We want to know, what is on, how far down is the water? Can we use the water? Can we build a habitat where, folks could spend some time there? Definitely, there is that desire as a scientist, as an explorer, to explore our environments there. And also going back to some of the experiments that I've done.
What are the experiments?
Yes, so I have used model organisms because it's very valuable getting studies done on humans and getting blood samples and all of that. So there's a lot of science you can do there. But then there's a lot of science that you really need to get tissue samples from inside, or you need to do a lot of very detailed molecular biology to understand the changes. So there's been a variety of different experiments I've done, with my team, I should say. Science is a team sport.
It's team sport.
You always do it with a group of collaborators, team members, and so on. So one of the ones that we've done from my lab was looking at the changes in the brain. And
human brain?
The human, so I was actually using the fruit fly brain, which is not that different in terms of its fundamental function. The proteins that are used as transmitters to send information, very similar. And so we found that in space, there were definitely effects on the brain, on the fruit fly brain, as a result of spaceflight. And what was also interesting is we had an experiment where we were using a centrifuge to create an artificial 1G environment. And we found that we were able to partially reverse.
Meaning 1G at the International
Space Station. And
you were creating artificial gravity at the International Space Station for the fruit fly model.
Exactly. And we were able to reduce some of the defects that we were seeing in the nervous system after flight when we brought the flies back down and aged them. So that's why actually I'm very excited with the experiment where they're going to do an MRI of the brains pre-flight and post-flight as part of the Axiom 4 mission, where they're doing neuroimaging with these MRI to look at the detailed changes in the brain. So given that we have found that with Drosophila, changes in the brain, I'm very interested to see what some of the
Axiom 4
of the Axiom 4 data.
What are the other experiments which have been done on the International Space Station? I'm told they grow tomatoes, they grow
absolutely,
salad, lettuce.
Yes,
all of that.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, so
and
plant
they eat it
experiments.
Also there.
Yes, in fact, some of the tomatoes were very well appreciated by the crew members. But yes, some of the plant experiments have been very valuable and useful. We have, a variety of different plant habitats on the International Space Station. And it's funny because, the plant habitats have to be very well illuminated. So often you will see when the crew members are celebrating something, one of the members has a birthday party or something, they will often do it near the plant habitat because
it's like the garden on space.
Exactly. It makes you happy, right? And you have lights on and so on. So you have plants that have grown. I myself have done experiments looking at immune system function to see, do bacteria, like for example, there's a specific kind of bacteria called Serratia marcescens, which can cause skin infections in humans, but it can also affect and kill flies. And so we looked at, Serratia exposed to spaceflight can cause increased pathogenicity, and when those bacteria that were exposed to space were brought back to the ground, they killed the fruit fly host faster than the ones that hadn't gone to space. And what was really interesting is we took those, and if you take those bacteria and you grow them on the ground under normal, Earth conditions, and then you infect the flies again, let's say the next morning after they've grown overnight, then you lose that increased virulence. And so my team and we did a study to understand what's happening, the molecular biology underlying why did these Serratia bacteria become more pathogenic, what is the change, and how are they killing the host faster?
There are also, I'm told, some new species of bacteria which have been discovered at the International Space Station, and there was an Indian from the Jet
Yes,
Propulsion
Venkat.
Laboratory.
Yes, yes.
Do you have any? Because there was one of them which was named after our former President Kalam.
Yes.
What are those, and why do you have new species growing there? Because they did it on the HEPA filters.
Right, exactly. So, actually, this is also one of the advantages of doing studies in these enclosed environments like the International Space Station is it gives you a little bit of an insight into closed environments even on Earth. So, the more deep sequencing, detailed sequencing that you do, looking for microbes, even on Earth, if you go to an environment that you haven't monitored before, you will probably find novel bacteria in those environments as well. So we carry bacterial colonies on us, in us.
We have lots of them. There are more bacterial cells in us than our human cells.
Exactly. So if you do enough sequencing, you will find novel bacteria, presumably really in any untapped environment.
What was the name of that Indian scientist? I'm forgetting. Can you recall who it was from JPL?
Venkat?
Dr. Venkat.
Yes.
And there's some organism, it's called Kalamensis. I remember that much.
Yes,
I don't remember the full name.
Yes,
that he honored Dr. Kalam for that particular.
Correct.
And are there any other biology experiments which come to your mind which have excited you at the International Space Station?
Yes, in fact, so many really, all of science excites me, but there's one that was really interesting that was done recently as a collaboration between the Japanese Space Agency and NASA. And it was looking at rodents or mice actually as a model system. And they were using different gravity levels. So they were using Earth's gravity level, Moon's gravity level, Mars gravity level, and then microgravity, and comparing the effect. And you know how we were talking earlier that, partial gravity and microgravity in 1G can all have different effects. So that was a really interesting experiment where comparing that and finding a threshold and of course it depends on what you're looking at. Are you looking at bone density loss? Are you looking at immune system changes? Are you looking at microbial species inside your body? And so this study was a really nice study looking at those changes at the different levels. So yeah, there are just so many good experiments that people do.
But in general, astronauts go up and down, and we've had over 700 astronauts.
Yes.
Not all to the International Space Station, but
yes.
astronauts up and down.
Yes.
They go fit and come back fit.
They do. And a couple of things there, astronauts are some of the fittest people that you'll find. So that helps a lot. Another thing is that they are very good about following certain regimented procedures. Like you have to exercise a certain number of hours a day.
2 hours a day.
Exactly. And that's really important. And they follow that, right? Their diet is very carefully crafted so that they get all the nutrients they need. But, over time, though, we've seen, especially in the early years when we were not so careful about quarantining crew before they went, people do get sick. Just like, human beings anywhere, right? You can get sick. And so that's where now some of these procedures with the quarantining before they fly is very important. And then maintaining, in the early days when they didn't know and they didn't do as much exercise, there would be more loss of, bone mass and muscle mass. But now we've managed to reduce. And so that's the beauty of science, right? The more you understand the changes, the more you can counter them. And now they are coming back much healthier, right?
And we saw astronaut Sunita Williams run a marathon in space, which she ran alongside the Boston Marathon.
That's right, exactly.
And she also stayed for 10 months and within 2 days she ran more than a mile. She came back really recently.
Exactly.
So they're coming back much fitter than what they were earlier.
Yes, and Sunny and all of these astronauts, of course, are, fabulous specimens of human beings. And so I'm not at all surprised that she handled it so well, and that after coming back she recovered so well. She's also had a lot of experience in space before,
yes.
so that helps too, because you know what to expect, you know how to counter your own changes, and so yeah, kudos to the whole team.
So the biology which you do, experimentation at a basic level,
Yes.
is contributing to longer duration flights. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if you compare to the space shuttle days when we were doing experiments for 12 days, maybe 20 days if we were lucky, now on the International Space Station, people are doing longer and longer experiments. Because if you even did it as a sortie mission, say a spacecraft, vehicle takes you up and takes you down, that's a month long. But you can even stay for multiple increments, and do many months of study. Multiple generations of plants have been grown, multiple generations of fruit flies have been grown, other organisms, C. elegans, and other models from Earth have been grown for longer and longer periods of time. So yes, absolutely.
Would you be sad now that the end of life of the International Space Station is near and 2031 it could be retired?
Well, so I would say that I absolutely celebrate the fact that the International Space Station was such a valuable lab for scientists for so long, but I'm also looking forward to the next platform. So the commercial LEO destination, which is going to be the next that will succeed.
It could be Axiom, it could be VAST.
Exactly,
it could be
we
Haven,
don't know.
or it could be the Axiom
Exactly.
station, one of them.
That's right. We don't know, which one will be the one, or maybe there'll be 2 or 3, who knows.
And we already have a Chinese space station all.
That's right.
And the Indian space station is
one
coming.
that's coming, exactly. So the more we have these platforms in space internationally, the more science we can do as a world community of scientists, and the better off I think we'll be prepared for those future long duration missions.
Thanks a lot for speaking to me, Dr. Sharmila.
Thank you
and
so much.
explaining the complexities of doing biology and human physiology experiments at the International Space Station in microgravity. So that was Dr. Sharmila Bhattacharya, a well-known biologist from NASA, telling us about the exciting science which happens at the International Space Station. And the basic fundamental is, if humans have to create a habitat outside Earth, we should be prepared for that. And all of this basic biology contributes towards that. So permanent habitation on the moon and possible permanent habitation on Mars. And where else humans can go. All in preparation to making sure that humans have a longer existence in this wide universe. Basic biology helping understand human presence on not just in space but also on Earth, because a lot of this feeds back for medicine on Earth. In New Delhi, Pallav Bagla for NDTV.